And there's a common myth that says like the best location is always the one with the most traffic. Would you consider that being true?
No, we always used to say, because that comes up a lot when we were analyzing locations. So somebody would say, the real estate broker would say, that's the highest volume McDonald's in town, or that's the highest volume whatever in town. And there's a famous philosopher, baseball player named Yogi Berra, and he said, that's so busy that nobody ever goes there anymore. Right?
Yeah,
You've heard that before,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
true.
Yeah.
The highest traffic doesn't necessarily means a great location. Traffic has a couple different variables. It's commuter traffic, where people are going from one place to another. It's high speed. There's local traffic, where people are stopping to go to the grocery store and other services. So
Yeah.
it really depends on your business, what your product and concept is geared toward.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so like since the brand is Money Talks Media, most of the audience may not be CFOs, like chief financial officers. They may not be people that are embedded in finance. But obviously there are financial metrics or inputs that are very important to understanding if their location may be an asset or a liability. Are there any metrics or inputs that you would say to look?
Well, I think when you're evaluating a location for a new business, whether it be restaurant or retail or whatever, and the first thing is whether you're buying or leasing is the rent or price of the property at market. Are you paying what the market bears at the moment? Is the property or the market in the growth path, or is it in a stable, never going to be bothered market, or is it in a declining market? Those are the main things that you would look at in terms of underwriting a new location.
Okay.
And obviously the strength of the market. If you're coming in with a fast food restaurant focused on hamburgers, how does everybody else in the market do? You've got to find out what kind of volumes they're doing, what their day part strengths are, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, to really analyze whether there's room for another one.
Yeah.
There's a concept called Hotelling's law, and it's a law of kind of clustering. So if you have one restaurant in a market, another restaurant comes in, it expands the market because you have more people coming to one intersection to have a choice.
Yeah.
The more restaurants you get at that intersection, the more choices you have, the more it attracts people, as opposed to locating, a mile away where there's no competition, where there's no choices. So that's, I think, another thing to consider is what is going to attract people to the market. Is it a grocery store that has visitors throughout the day? Is it just a high traffic location where people need to stop off as a freeway type of location?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned restaurants, and obviously our relationship have been around the restaurant space when I was interested. Could you give the audience maybe some more context around like your last experience, like working within the Wendy's brand? And
Well, I worked with Holiday Inns, as I mentioned in the beginning. I also worked for Photomat Corporation, which to you young folks wouldn't know what that is, but that was a small kiosk that put on shopping centers that sold and processed film for you, which we don't use anymore. But I was with Quaker State Corporation, obviously Wendy's International, where I spent the majority of my career. And we would build hundreds of locations a year. So you really got both franchise and company. So you really got a cross-section of what's working, what doesn't work with these properties.
And obviously working within those larger institutions, maybe medium size, maybe even smaller ones. I'm not sure if they were small, like employee wise or even like assets wise. Is there any rule of thumbs that people should look at when it comes to location selection?
Well, I think I kind of alluded to it earlier. Is what's the value? What's the value piece? Is the rent you're paying to the market? Or the price of the property you're buying on a per square basis at market? How's the access, visibility, parking, signage? There's so many variables to site selection. In fact, I mean, over the last 30, 40 years, companies have tried to come up with a program that will analyze a location based on all these variables and input,
Mm,
and provide you with a go no go sort of analysis. But
gotcha.
it's impossible. There's just
Yeah.
too many variables. And then you've got to really look at what is the strength of the market?
Mhm.
What are the competitors in your space doing? And how does your location and operation compare to theirs?
And so whenever you mentioned analyzing the market value and everything, are they using tools or are they using like mainly like Excel spreadsheets and stuff to do that?
Probably.
Yeah.
You know, uh, back when, and it wasn't that long ago,
Yeah.
but you could go to the county's tax records, find out what people were paying for their properties. You could talk to the local real estate brokers in the market that are marketing properties that would give you comps on what was being sold and what rents were.
Yeah.
So that information is readily available. It's probably, to your point, maybe to an Excel or some sort
Yeah.
of a website that provides that today, but that's the easy way to do it is just talk to the market.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So doing that, got you. Got you. Doing the research there. So you talked about market and obviously you mentioned competitors. And there's this thing in every industry when it comes to market saturation, especially within like YouTube. There's tons of creators out there. Market saturation. You have to you have to find a way to distinguish yourself, to be different, to be competitive, without while still remaining within your ethical values and everything. But when it comes to commercial real estate, is there anything that operators can do within a saturated market that may not be performing as well?
Well, I mean, that seems kind of like maybe a bit of a double-edged sword. A saturated market would connote that the operators are all struggling to just cash flow,
Mm,
and by doing that, they scale back labor. Maybe their service isn't quite as good. Maybe they've backed off marketing. So those kind of markets you start to see and really analyze to say, well, this market is not growing. It's saturated. There's no more growth. Maybe the market's shifted. You can,
mhm,
if you've been around Charlotte long enough, you can drive some areas and determine that a market is starting to deteriorate and
mhm,
people are moving further out.
mhm.
So it's those kind of analysis, and there's not much you can do if the markets are saturated and there's no upside growth there.
Yeah, yeah.
There's not much you can do about improving it.
Oh, true. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I guess you could lower prices, but that's kind of a double-edged sword. And
yeah.
if you can't afford to hire labor to provide good service, then that's a double-edged sword. So it's unfortunate that kind of goes back to when you underwrite a location, make sure it's in a growth market or a stable. A lot of people call them A markets. In Charlotte, it'd be a South Park.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's not going to go anywhere. It's always going to be a great market.
Mm. Uptown as well. Would you say
Uptown,
uptown as well?
some parts of Uptown,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, Uptown itself, the epicenter is a good example of
yeah,
something that's gone bad in a strong market. So
yeah.
just got to be cautious.
Are you aware of any trends that may be going on with the whole work from home policy that a lot of these corporations are implementing to getting people to come back to the office? Do you know if there's anything that's driving that?
Well, I mean, I wasn't from the office side of commercial real estate, but I suspect that that's a strong driver. Is office landlords are,
Mm,
leases are coming due or rents are being renegotiated.
yeah.
The tenants are in a position where they've got to fill the space or renegotiate a smaller space or relocate. So unless the tenants can get the employees back to work,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's kind of a bit of a moving target,
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
think.
I could see that. Definitely lots of mixed opinions about that. And we always see, especially on the finance side, when we look at companies like, since I work for a large bank, they have certain lines of business, and each line of business have a profit and loss statement. And a part of that profit and loss statement is
Yep.
occupancy expense.
Yep.
And they calculate it off like number of cubicles, like the occupancy rate, like seeing how many cubicles are filled, and each one of those cubicles costs $1, and it rolls up within every line of business.
Yeah.
And so I'm just imagining it thinking it seeing that on a much larger scale with the total institution. So that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
So no, thanks, Jay. That's super valuable insight, and I'm sure the same thing applies across the world and wherever you're sitting today, to the audience, wherever you're sitting today.